Welcome to ASAE's Facebook and live Periscope session about the Power of A Awards. The Power of A Awards are really the heart of the Power of A program. We're so excited to tell you more about it today. It's where we find and develop the stories that convey what associations do, their value, their power. We will tell you about the awards program and encourage all of you to apply. It's fun to apply. You'll learn about that, and it's very rewarding. My name is Paul Pomerantz. I'm CEO of the American Society of Anesthesiologists and chair of ASAE's Power of A committee. I'm joined today by two past Power of A award winners, Lisa Junker and Amber McLaughlin. And I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Junker. I'm the Director of Publications and Communications at the Entomological Society of America.
Hi, I'm Amber McLaughlin. I'm Senior Strategist, Marketing, Communications, and Partnerships for American Counseling Association.
So before we get started, I want to take a moment and go over some housekeeping items. We received some questions in advance, but we welcome your questions during the session. Please write your questions on Facebook in the comments section, post them through Periscope, or tweet them at ASAE Center. We may not be able to answer all the questions in the session. If we don't get to yours, please feel free to email your questions to publicpolicy@asaecenter.org, and our staff will answer any additional questions after the event. For the best sound experience, we encourage you to use headphones or listen on a mobile device. Due to limitations with social platforms like Facebook Live and Periscope, these live feeds cannot be captioned. Pursuant to ASAE's accessibility commitment, we will devote resources to encourage participation via the online chat room and then make a captioned recording available shortly after the event. For those of you who aren't familiar, ASAE created the Power of A Awards to showcase how associations leverage their unique resources to solve problems, advance industry and professional performance, kickstart innovation, and improve world conditions. Associations are involved in activities every day that make a substantial, positive, and powerful impact on our lives. Associations really impact everything we do every day. For more information about the Power of A Awards, we encourage you to visit www.thepowerofa.org/awards. You can read a full description about last year's winners and find the link to the website to apply. Also on the website, lots of information about the Power of A program, as well as videos of all the Summit Award winners. You don't need to be an ASAE member to apply, but you'll need to create an ASAE login to enter the website and submit your application. And we'll talk about all the advantages. So we're going to start with Amber. Amber, last year the American Counseling Association received a Power of A Summit Award for Grow, Connect, Empower Toolkit. Can you share with us a bit about your program? I think our audience may also be interested in how your team worked on the application and any tips you may have for people applying this year.
Sure. So in 2016, we really wanted to do something different for Counseling Awareness Month, which was April. We wanted to do something to give back to communities nationwide. And thinking about this, Boys and Girls Clubs of America seemed like a natural fit. They serve more than 4 million youth across the nation, and they have approximately 320,000 staff and volunteers working for them. As you can imagine, they serve as the front lines, really, in helping today's youth face a lot of serious issues. We're talking about bullying, LGBTQ inclusion, grief, trauma, some of the serious things that can have lifelong consequences. So this seemed, as I said, like a natural fit for us, and so we wanted to provide them with a toolkit with some of the counseling insights they could really use on a daily basis to help empower these kids. So our counselors, got together, including 7 past presidents. We had a great group of volunteers that did these tip sheets and podcasts. We put them all in this wonderful online toolkit and sent it out to Boys and Girls Club, and it's still in use. The program is still in its infancy. We continue to grow this partnership. As a matter of fact, this April we're going to have a volunteer week for our members at local clubs all across the country. So it was, definitely a program that was a great fit for this award, and we knew that pretty early on. In looking at the awards process, I decided to download all of the questions into a Word document so that I really had some time to work through each individual question. And once I decided on the category, which was Power to Enrich Lives, I was then able to go back and tailor all of our answers to really fit that theme. And it really helped me in structuring my wording and all of the messages we use to reply. So it did take some time to go in and kind of edit and streamline the content. So I would suggest, starting this process now and, like I said, copying and pasting those questions into your Word document and really making it your own.
Great, great. We're going to come back to some of the decisions you made and compare and contrast your responses. But Lisa, we want to hear more about the Entomological Society and your award last year. You convened a summit, right, on and let me see if I pronounce this correctly, the Aedes aegypti crisis in the Americas.
Very good.
A meeting bringing together entomologists and public health officials from around the world to discuss the best ways to combat the mosquito that transmits the Zika virus. What insight can you share with us about how your organization applied for the award, and did you include multiple departments from the organization? How did the process work?
Yeah, for us, we actually knew, I think a little like Amber, fairly early on, that we were interested in potentially applying for a Power of A award, either related to the summit itself or to the larger Grand Challenges initiative that our summit was a part of. It probably helps that we have several very active ASAE members on our staff, so we were thinking about the awards fairly early on. And we started, really early in the process of putting the summit together, thinking in very concrete terms about our goals for the summit and the data and metrics that we wanted to be gathering and the metrics we wanted to be thinking about, which is all good practice anyway. I mean, you should be doing that. But thinking in advance about the award and about the questions we would need to answer really helped us be prepared when we needed to actually fill out the form. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I know I've been sitting in front of awards forums before thinking, wow, it would have been so great if I had thought about this 7 months ago and gathered,
Absolutely.
So the fact that we didn't really have to think that because we've been gathering that data in advance was really helpful to us. The summit itself was very much a team effort. We're a relatively small staff association. If I remember correctly, we had 13 staff at the time when we were putting the summit together. So, I mean, you can basically go out in the hall and have a collaborative effort just by talking loudly, but we really did have people from all throughout the organization involved. Our meetings department was handling logistics with Brazil. Our director of strategic initiatives was recruiting speakers and working on the agenda, the overall shape of the program. Our CEO was, of course, very involved in planning, but he was also out traveling and talking to people and raising awareness of the summit, gathering input from folks who would be attending. My team was involved in spreading the word about what we were planning and then spreading the word about outcomes from the event after the fact. We actually had our communications manager attend on site, so he was able to take pictures and be on social media and help write up outcome statements to be released immediately after the summit was over, so all that was really helpful. So then when it was time to actually put the application together, we had a group of people who had been intimately involved in planning the summit from the very beginning. And all of them were involved in the preparation of the application. My team took the lead on writing it, but everybody provided information and everybody reviewed it to make sure that we didn't miss any of the nuances or any of the the central facts or examples that might help support the story that we had to tell.
Great, great. Well, this is maybe for the two of you, because the application, it looks easy, it looks relatively short,
Yep.
But it required some careful strategic planning. So what did you learn when you applied? I know there are certain sections require brevity, and so how do you manage that? What advice do you have for those struggling to translate from their typical experience into something intended for a broader audience?
Well, my advice would be, don't worry, you're normal. It can be really challenging, to write in this manner. But I'm going to tell you, once you do it, you're able to use that content in so many different ways. Once we got those message points together, I used literally the same blurbs in my communications about various projects for Counseling Awareness Month for the whole year. So the challenge was extremely worthwhile, and it was a very useful practice for me. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm an editor by background, so there's not much I like more than a block of text I get to just cut down to size. But I found, it was really important, especially when we were first starting to put the application together. We were trying to take text from several different sources and kind of, we have this that we could use and this from over here. But we found that the language we were using in some other places was too technical. And we also found that, the pieces didn't always fit together as well as we would like. So we really had to take a step back and think about the story we were trying to tell. How did this event really showcase the power of associations to improve society, to improve the world, to benefit humanity? And once we focused on that story and telling it just as simply and directly as possible, that really helped a lot.
Yeah, and definitely, you may remember this from your high school English teacher. Take it bit by bit, chunk by chunk. This is not something you want to sit down and say, I'm going to write this all at once. As you mentioned, it requires some editing and slicing and dicing. So your first round is not going to be your final round. When you take it chunk by chunk and then you give yourself time to go back, look at those snippets and really edit them and get them as concise as you possibly can, that's when you're going to have the best outcome.
And that's a really good point. Definitely, I would recommend not starting the application the day it's due. You're going to want to give yourself time to, to go back and think about it. You may also have additional stakeholders in your organization that need to read and review it like I did, but even if you are the sole person who's writing it and you don't need to go through a review process, giving yourself time to turn away from it and come back is really helpful.
Great. I was thinking as when I was chairing the awards process, I think translating the impact, we all have associations, all have strong impact into everyday terms that everybody can understand and relate to, that convey that story but in a powerful way that can demonstrate the outcome. Yeah. So that's great stuff. We have questions coming in from online, which is really exciting, as well as some questions that were submitted in advance. So one of the questions, and what I'll do is I'll alternate a little bit, mix it up a little bit. But one was to ask us to explain the award levels and how many programs won last year. So first of all, everybody's a winner. I think last year we had a record about 160 applicants, and of those, 86 were winners. There were 56 silver, 30 gold, and 6 Summit Awards. And the Summit Awards come from the gold category, and there's one for each category, and then one general. And the reason I say everybody's a winner because every story is a story to be is of value, that has value internally, motivates the staff. It's things that can be used within the organization, and certainly positions you, because we've had to go through many cycles, to submit again as you learn by expressing that. When your award level, all the silver and gold are recognized, and they're recognized in several ways. But one of the things we do, ASA has been doing, is recognizing all the organizations through the spotlight. So they're spotlighted all year round. So that's very good. And at the Summit Dinner, all winners are recognized. The Summit Awards are the special ones around which the dinner is created. Any other thoughts about the different levels?
I think they covered it.
Great. So here's a question that came from online. What was the one thing you learned by applying for the award? One thing.
Wow, if you want to narrow it down, I would say it's, at least for us, it's always good practice to be able to discuss the scope and importance of an insect-based problem for a general audience. That's something that we need to do on a regular basis in communications, science policy efforts that we have. And although the staff don't have the level of the depth of expertise that our members do in entomology, even we get very used to just knowing these details and these Latin names of insects that aren't necessarily clear or immediately obvious to people who don't work with insects, or at least people who work with insects all the time. So for us, going through and thinking about how do we tell this story to people who don't already know that the Aedes aegypti mosquito is actually one of the deadliest animals in the world. Like that, most people don't know that. Most people think, especially in the States, I got bit by a mosquito, it's no big deal. So to really help people understand, the depth and scope of this problem and why it needs to be taken seriously. That was a really good exercise for us.
Mm-hmm. For me, I'd say, well, let me start this by explaining our program started at the beginning of April, okay, and the award submission was at the end of April, the process. And so having to take this very complex operation and condense it down into this powerful messaging, in the end, it really helped me to put together kind of this comprehensive project plan and really understand what we were trying to accomplish that started out as this very ambitious vision. And through putting this all together into words, it really empowered the program. I mean, it really did. We were able to build on it. And it helped me to just conceptualize all of these months of conversations and ideas and then put a comprehensive project plan together from it. And as I said, today, the partnership is still very strong because of that. Had I not had that much structure around the partnership process, I'm not sure we would be where we are today. So I'm very grateful to ASAE and the process.
Great lessons. Here's a question that came in advance. My program seems to fit under a few different categories. Do you have a suggestion on how to determine where to apply, or can we apply in multiple categories?
You can apply in multiple categories if you'd like. The most important thing really when you're deciding which category to apply in is to really look closely at the criteria for that category. And just be aware that the judges don't have a maximum or minimum number of awards they can give in any one category, so it doesn't hurt or help your chances to pick a particular category. So you can't game the system by thinking this is a smaller category. You really just want to pick the category that fits best with what you did, where your story fits best with those criteria. And at least based in my experience, I haven't judged the awards in a few years, but I did a few years back, and the judges really do look at each application individually and compare it against the criteria. They take that very seriously. So, so really just focus on the story you have to tell. If you do want to apply in more than one category, you can. If you just really can't decide, but other than that, really focus on the criteria.
Amber, anything to add to that?
Well, it kind of touches on our next question here. I did struggle with whether to enter in the Make a Better World category because Boys and Girls Club is an international organization. They have operations on military bases around the world. And so, at the end of the day, it was a discussion with some team members saying, what is the core value here? And because this was a frontline issue where we were empowering the staff and volunteers to affect children, to help parents, we looked at it more as, touching an individual life. So at the end, that category, the Power to Enrich Awards, work better for us. But yeah, just have some meaningful conversations with your team members and kind of, brainstorm what you think is at the core of your program.
Great. Well, the website has a lot of good detail. I'm holding it up here right on my phone, but has a lot of good detail on the award categories. And I remember sitting on the award committee, looking at it, as Lisa suggested, quite seriously according to the definitions. But also, we, if you look at the definitions, they're broad enough so that whatever you're doing, as long as it has impact on society, will likely fit somewhere. So look for that best fit, but recognize that the awards committee is looking at impact and may likely say that this may fit better here or there based on the impact it has. And the awards committee has no limit. It will recognize as many gold or silver as possible. The narrowing down comes in the Summit Award. So that gives you a lot of latitude to take risks and identify the most suitable category or even multiple categories if you think that's appropriate. Another question that had come in before, somebody asked, when's the right time to apply? So what they wrote was, the program I am considering applying for has been in place for more than a year, but it's ongoing. how do I decide if it's the right time to apply?
That was actually something that we argued about when we were deciding whether or not to apply last year. So this is my opportunity to publicly tell my CEO, David, you were right, I was wrong. I would say, I would actually keep in mind two things. One is that if you do apply and don't win an award, you can reapply in the future based on what you've learned. So, it's not you've applied, you've used up all your chances. So if you apply 1 year and then are able to come back with more information, that's great. But I would also say, sort of think what's going to change in the next year? Is there going to be a big event or a significant change? Like, will there be an election or, some trend that's accelerating that would make a big difference in your application? If not, why not apply now? Like, if there's really not going to be a huge change and you're basically just adding on, additional data to the data you already have, I would say go ahead and apply now. But if you are expecting a big event or something else that would significantly change the story you have to tell, then it might be worth waiting.
Right, and I think it goes back to your measurable outcomes. So, as you mentioned, if you do have an event that is going to increase your numbers or get you better data to support the category that you've entered in, then I would say, wait for that. But if you already have substantial data and measurable outcomes around your project, there's no need to wait.
Yeah, a really good point. And when thinking back on my experience on the awards committee, there were new programs, ongoing programs, and established programs, and it all depends if they were at the right time to demonstrate that impact. They had that they were able to demonstrate that evidence. And what's interesting is the range of programs. There were some that were very local, very powerful, some national, some global in scope. And I'm looking here at the judging criteria. We look at the reach. Is it solving a problem, and how do you document the problem that exists? But it's something that may have a broad impact on an industry, a profession, or a community, local, national, international. It empowers what associations do, things that you do through volunteerism, education, social responsibility, standard setting, research, problem solving. So thinking about, can you relate it back to the work of associations? And finally, objectives and outcomes. Have you been able to look at and have a measurable impact on the problem you're trying to solve? And I think if you reach that point, you're probably ready to apply. And as both our panelists are saying, there's never a wrong time. Right? You learn by applying, and if it's not the right time, you can reapply next year. So it's not exactly like the Academy Awards. So it looks like we have a couple more questions coming in from online. Okay, here we are. So how has the power of A impacted how you think about your work?
I found, I always find when I get the email in my box with the Power of A award winners, I find the stories very inspiring. I'm a bit of an association nerd in that way. But it really did, we found it very meaningful to be included among those winners and to see the other gold winners and the Summit Award winners. Just to know that we have been recognized for making that kind of recognizable impact was very meaningful to us as a staff. Not that we wouldn't have continued with our Grand Challenge initiative. It's something that's a very high priority for us and we think is very important. But having that recognition just gives you that sort of glow of accomplishment, as you move on and work really hard on the next project. Absolutely.
I mean, it was tremendously inspirational for us. And I can tell you when we got the word that, we were a Summit winner and shared it with the staff, I think it made a tremendous difference in how the staff approached their work. I think they, the next day came into work with an enormous sense of pride. They already had a great sense of pride, but it just really reinforced why they were there with American Counseling Association and, let people know how important their work is. So it impacted us in a very positive way.
It's something we all share as associations. We all serve different constituents, do different things, but the one thing we do together is have a broad impact on society and solving its problems. It's time to wrap up, and really enjoyed our half hour together. I want to thank our award winners for joining us today, Amber and Lisa, and thanks to everyone who watched and submitted questions. As a reminder, a closed caption recording of the broadcast will be made available at a later date through the ASAE social media properties. We also send out a link to anyone who registered in advance. If you have any additional questions, please let us know. Email publicpolicy@asaecenter.org, publicpolicy@asaecenter.org, or write a comment on Facebook and Twitter. And again, thanks to all of you for joining us today.